Welcome, everyone, to the Road to Freedom podcast. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Matt.
And today we're talking about how we want to stop educating our children and destroying the entire world through ignorance and debt that we don't need to take. So we need to be in debt elsewhere. So we're going to be talking about the non-aggression principle as it relates to education, both from public school stance as well as covering college. We might split it up into 2 episodes, but we're going to kind of give a brief overview, and especially as it relates to libertarian ideas, especially through the non-aggression principle. As always, you can find the podcast at a myriad of places. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, Google Play, and of course we have one for YouTube for all those who want to watch a 40-minute scroll of our poster with the audio. So that's up there, and if you can rate it and leave reviews and tell other people, that would be wonderful. We're on episode 6 here. So we're not quite a real podcast yet, because I think you got to get 10 and it'd be like a super well done podcast. We're at 50. So we're almost there. But we did have a really fun episode. I really liked the last episode. We did episode 5, where we discussed Disney World and its private government that it holds, and seems to be not in complete chaos, or what Somalia looks like today, as libertarians are always told to move to. I mean, if I was told to move to Disney World, it's the happiest place on earth, from what I'm contractually required to say if I live there, I think. Yep. So check out that one. But we did talk about briefly the city of Kalamazoo having issues with how it reacts to the homeless population. We talked about why public property has such an issue, and this is one of those areas. There's been some updates since we've had the podcast, so I'm going to turn over to Matt, who's going to kind of give you a brief update on what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, so a couple days ago, the Occupy Kalamazoo people, they were moved because police were waiting on orders from like the city commissioners and everything like that to do anything, because technically by camping in the park, they were all committing misdemeanors. So no one got arrested, but they actually ended up somehow. I don't know. Actually, the article didn't go into depth of how, but I'm guessing it was peaceful. They moved the encampment in the Bronson Park to an old fire station. I can't confirm if they're like letting them in the fire station. I think they're just camping outside, which is a lot smaller area, probably about 2 blocks away. In town, and they're actually letting them stay there for up to 30 days. Because the big thing was they, people were getting mad because camping, and there was also health issues because there's no hookups, there's no showers, there's no running water. There's not a fountain anymore to bathe in because they got rid of that because it was racist.
Yeah.
But there were actually construction workers working on the building right there were interviewed, and they said they were openly seeing, drug use, defecation in the park. So might want to wait to visit there for a little while.
Downtown Kalamazoo, a family place.
Yeah, a family place where you can poop in public.
Yeah. Well, I think this shows that law is inherently political. We always think that the law is kind of the stalwart, it keeps everyone in check, but it seems to be only applied when the ruling elite decides to send its enforcers out and to carry out the will of the people by any means necessary.
Yeah, there was a little part in here where it was saying the county commissioner was like saying how when he first took his office, he was sworn in and was he was asked if he would always uphold the ordinances and whatnot, and he said he would always do that, but here there comes people camping in the park, and he lets them stay there for like 2 or 3 weeks until they finally decide, like, all right, now we'll move them.
Yeah.
or now we'll do whatever. It's like if you're gonna uphold the ordinances,
Well,
you
and
gotta uphold them all the time.
I think you said it too, where it's Occupy Kalamazoo, which is a bunch of predominantly white college age kids who have always just wanted to just do what's been on TV about what 8 years ago for the Occupy Wall Street movement. Well, at least they're not Antifa. That's all I have to say. So if it was
Yeah.
just a collection of homeless people who don't have a voice, who don't have the ability to create backlash as much as the college students are, I doubt we would be seeing this type of response. Yeah.
Yeah, interestingly enough, just a little bit more on that is when I found out it was called Occupy Kalamazoo, I googled it and I found this article that the director of the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission, who is also under fire supposedly by these Occupy Kalamazoo people, because it really boiled down to it seems like a lot of the homeless people that are complaining about the Gospel Mission are just complaining because they center their treatment and everything around gospel, and they're like, in one of their demands, they're demanding a secular place for them to go, like a secular mission, which is just stupid, because it's like, if you really want to become homeless, they're not shoving it down your throat. They even say that you're just kind of like, hey, you should go to church, but they don't force you to. The only thing they force you to do when you go into the treatment is to not do drugs and be a drunk.
Yeah. So you can't take peyote and have that type of religion. But other than that, I talk about almost literally biting the hand that feeds you. I mean, I'm sure the mission has its own problems, and but I think the very fact that it's full, it's not like there isn't other options that people can go to where there are other ones not associated with the mission. But I've sat in meetings before where the mission is there and a few other representatives from different agencies in Kalamazoo who assist homeless. So there are other places to go, but the mission seems to be having a big impact, and for taking absolutely 100% zero, 100% zero. I guess that makes sense. They fully do not take any government funding because they don't want to be forced to change anything about their faith-based way that they do it, including it's called the Gospel Mission, and there's a reason for that. So that's plausible. And here's the thing: no one's forcing them to be there. If people want to leave, I've interacted with a kid before. Gosh, he was probably 17. Interacted with him when he was literally setting a tent up on a private business, and I felt sorry for him, and I told him about the mission. I said, hey, there's 3 hots and a cot there, pretty much. And he says, oh yeah, I was there, but I don't roll like that. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, they wanted me to clean up after I got done eating, and I just don't roll like that. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is a kid, but I've also had other interactions with homeless people where the amount of thought that they have, where life owes me X, is so prevalent that I've had with these conversations. And I just want to say, look where you're at. Look at what you've devolved into. You're living on the street. You're, dirty. You're. It's not how humans should live. And here's a place that's willing to take you in, and all you have to do is not drink and not do drugs. And if you have those issues, they do offer treatment. So if you just abide by the program, they can help you out. And they're like, nope, I am owed, a free meal. I am owed this place. And it's just like, dude, look at where you're at. You are not owed anything. Nature is scary and tough and cruel, and so is this world. And you're going to go through hardships. And if you don't realize that you are owed absolutely zero coming into this world, I don't know how you can not see that when you are fighting over a half a pack of Oreos with another homeless person. I don't know where that mentality comes from.
Yeah, it's crazy, the sense of like self-entitlement some of these people get. It's like, where did you get that from? Look at the decisions you've made in your life and what has happened to you in your life that you're now homeless. Why would you ever think the world owes you anything? Like, you need to work for it. Go
Right.
live in the woods and be a mountain man if you don't want to like adhere to society rules.
Yeah. Well, and what we've seen issues with L.A. and San Francisco and yeah, I'll just say it, California. California is always an issue. It's always nice to see the terribleness that comes out of socialist utopias like California, so that we can tell people no when they bring those ideas over here.
Yes.
We see the rise of tent cities come back up, and I one of my favorite movies, They Live, John Carpenter, has tent cities from the 80s, and we're seeing a rise of it again.
Yeah, the speaking of the socialist areas is when I was reading that article, the director of the mission was saying how it because he went down to go meet with these people camping out in Bronson Park, and every single one of them he tried to talk to at that time said they didn't want to speak with him without legal representation. So he even said he was quoted saying that he thinks that with their reactions being like that someone else is getting to them and using them to push their own agenda. So when I Googled Occupy Kalamazoo and was looking at the first few things that popped up, it came from the Michigan Democratic Socialist webpage. And it kind of made it look like they are one of the like funders or backers of this Occupy Kalamazoo thing right now, or at least they're trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, we've seen that with other movements before. Paying homeless people to protest in front of anti-union places or just anti-Republican areas. So it's happened before, and again, it's the people who want other people to say no to money, but then take in collections for their political movement, and then use hapless college students who probably just want the best for homeless people, and of course people do. I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't realize that it happens to people. Supposedly, if we're a community that cares about veterans, which for the last 100 years, I don't think we've had that type of mentality come to fruition. We've had a lot of rhetoric for it, but nothing to actually say, we care about veterans, so let's put them on the most socialized type of healthcare possible. And the community at large, I think, seems to speak that doesn't seem to work too well. So Matt, thank you for fighting for our freedom. Here's socialism.
Yeah, the thing we didn't fight for. I didn't fight for socialism. I fought for freedom and capitalism.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the veterans from World War II were like, oh man, I'm glad the National Socialist Party in Germany is done. Oh, what's this? They're over here now?
Yeah. I'm
Not
getting
that
socialist benefits now? Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Again, the socialist policies aren't exactly akin to Nazism, but I'm just saying, we did take a lot of Nazi scientists over in Operation Paperclip, so maybe we got one of their social programs directors.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Anything more with that?
That about sums it up.
So it's been great that homelessness has been abolished because the city has moved the encampment over to a piece of their property, setting up a tent city, and therefore solving the issue. Thanks, government.
Yeah.
All right. So episode 3, we introduced the non-aggression principle, which we said was the foundation for all libertarian thought for the most part. We're going with that general definition. Non-aggression principle says that you can't use violence, the threat of violence, force to deprive people of their life, liberty, or property. And we applied that both to individuals. I can't come over to your house, punch you in the nose, and drag you outside and said, this is mine now. And we said that the government is a collection of people, and because they're a collection of people doesn't mean that they can have 99 tell the one that they need to get off their property that they own, that the 99 tells the one person to get off the one person's property. And so we said that the non-aggression principle should apply moralistically, legally. It should apply even across the board for collections of people, aka governments, have the most positive outlook or positive benefit rather than using force. When you use force, you delegitimize whatever you're trying to do, even if you're trying to do good. So the mob comes in, punches you in the nose, says that they're taking the $100 from your wallet, but as they're running out, they say, your neighbors down the street told me that I could do this, and you just have to live with it because you didn't sign a contract that will say is the social contract, and we're going to go give this money to a food bank in your name. So we promise to do really good things with it. Well, is that still theft?
Yeah.
Yes, that's still theft. Is that still immoral? Yes, that's still immoral. Even when 99 people tell the one person that they're the sacrificial lamb. You don't have the right to do that to other people, and we should make sure that we, as a nation who is, or a people, a civilization who is trying to progress the species, to progress to a more, not utopian state, but just a better world to live in, should not engage in violence, because violence is inherently destructive. It's dehumanizing, and in every relationship that we have, whether it's you and a friend over sharing a video game, you're engaging in the non-aggression principle. When you go into McDonald's and you order a hamburger and you pay $1.05 for it, there's still tax there, so theft is still being engaged upon you, but violence as a result. But you and the McDonald's corporation, or the teller, or whoever owns the McDonald's, you're engaging in the non-aggression principle. When you have a couch to sell to a poor college student for $5, you're engaging in the non-aggression principle. So this isn't some pie in the sky. We need to advocate this until the utopian comes about, like you have with communism, which is a evolution from socialism. So people who say communism is bad, we need to understand that socialism is the backdrop by which the communistic state comes about. So that's always something that I hear that isn't always the case when people espouse, this was communistic. Well, it may have communistic ideals and tendencies, but socialism tends to be the benefactor that topples capitalism. Socialism comes about and it brings about the complete utopian state for communism, and that's still only done through force. And so we want to limit the amount of use of force. And one of those areas where force is definitely used is the public education system, both a understanding of a kind of a K through 12th grade here in the United States, and then also colleges. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the non-aggression principle as it applies to public education. So, Matt, how come you hate poor people and you just want them to die off by not being able to add 2 plus 2?
Because it's just poor people smell funny.
Yeah.
That's why.
They're different than me. How come?
And I don't like them.
How come? Yeah, that must be just a complete thing to always do, like a Southern accent whenever you try to make someone sound less smart. If I was just like,
or like
it's
ignorant.
because, it's because the poor people smell. I mean, it just doesn't have the same act as, it's because those people are different than me.
It's probably all because of the Civil War still. We're Northerners. I wonder if Southerners do that kind of thing, or maybe they talking like an uppity Northern,
like a Mr. Howell from Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is funny that I bet it dates back to this the Civil War there. It's like, just, you want to make someone sound ignorant and stupid? Just act Southern.
Yeah. Because there's definitely not trash here in the North.
No, not at all.
All right. Well, yeah. So those Southern people, they don't go to school. We don't see the education flourishing in the South whatsoever. So let's get back on topic, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess how did we get into this mess? Because the way that that public schooling is set up isn't the way that it's always been done. You have that idea of the little house on the prairie. You have that one room schoolhouse, but it seemed like for what people didn't know, that type of education brought about some really impressive understanding and ideas. I mean, we had the the Industrial Revolution occur under a type of mindset where people engaged in education through private means for the most part, and it really wasn't until kind of the 1850s and starting into the 20th century where we have the current model that we have. It was kind of developed by John Dewey, who was this progressive thinker who he wanted to stress, instead of general education, he wanted to kind of focus on highly vocational education. So kind of, you have these industries coming up. We need to educate people to be part of those industries. So instead of having kind of a general knowledge and studying from books, we need to get rid of those, and we need to kind of have a worker class arise, and we need to educate that worker class so that they can run the machines or cultivate the land. And believe it or not, this sounds super Soviet in a sense. I mean, he pretty much was a person who thought that you needed to destroy kind of free market capitalism, Judeo-Christian Greek Western culture. You need to limit individuality, and the focus on historical awareness needed to kind of take a subset, and what we needed to do was teach you how to put the widget together and how to program, not program, but to set up the machine that would help create the textile. So we've had this model for something like 120 years, and it has not been reformed at all.
Yeah, it's definitely they're taking on the they think it's not broken, so they won't fix it, but it's definitely broken, needs to be fixed.
Well, and here's the thing, like we're surrounded by teachers. I've known a number of them, but I think if you talk to anybody, if you did that, man on the street, and you talk to anybody and you said, is the American education system good, or is it getting better? I don't think you could find a person that said yes. I don't think the most super supportive teacher who is a part of the union, the teachers union, would have that type of response. So what does that tell us when we're just continuing on and continuing on and continuing on in the system that hasn't faced reformation yet?
Yeah, and the sad part with that is, I mean, I guarantee there's tons of good teachers out there that could teach things if they were to teach things how they wanted, or what best fit their students. It would do great, but they are forced by the government to adhere to these standards, standardized testing, the Common Core, and all that stuff. They're forced to, when they're probably sitting there thinking, these kids aren't getting it. How am I going to get it through to them when something else might work for some of those kids? So it's not a teacher thing. It's definitely a policy thing.
Yeah, well, and what you're talking about is from a federal level. It wasn't up until 1979 that we even had the Department of Education, which has this insane top-down mentality where they'll tell you, we'll give you X amount of money if you incorporate this, education system into your program. And those who don't take it would just be at a huge disadvantage monetarily. But you don't have the Department of Education until 40 years ago. So it's not an old system that's just kind of floundering a little bit here and there. It really hasn't been going on, at least from a federal level standpoint.
Yeah.
So every year we continue to spend more money per student on K through 12, and we have yet to see any test scores increase. There are people that take umbrage to having the test scores be the medium, but the one thing that I always hear is, all we're doing is teaching to the test. It's stupid. It doesn't create any educational experience, and so we're just teaching to the test. Okay, so if that's your focus and you're teaching to the test, you suck at it. It hasn't the test scores haven't improved since you've been teaching to the test. Since a greater increase in money has been taken out of the hands of people who are saying, here's my tax money, use it towards education. It's hard to find people who fight against education or educational spending or increase in education in government because, all you have to say is, won't somebody please think of the children? So it's really hard to be against. It's like being for sex offender reform. You're probably not going to win too many converts by saying that you're against education.
Yeah, because it's like as soon as people you say that, like, because I mean, if I'm going to be paying taxes into the education system, I would like a bigger say, you know, but of how they're going to make all these changes. But the moment you say, we need to change something, and people are like, well, what about the kids? You're just, and even if you have a good a way after that, or you say this is because of the kids, I want the kids to do better because they've been slowly doing worse every year. The results come out every year, and the tests are just getting worse and worse. So we're going against that for the kids. But no, as soon as someone brings up, oh, what about the children? They just stop listening to you anyway.
Yeah, yep. And then it becomes inherently political. You have taxpayers, you have the schools, you have the administration of the schools, you have the teachers union. All these people, all the politicians, all these people see it as a vehicle for power, and the results don't seem to speak for itself. So that's one thing that I don't really know what the answer is. So we talk about this podcast of us continuing to try and learn about what are the answers. If you're not going to teach to the test, I don't know what type of metric would you use to say, this is a good teacher, this is a bad teacher, this is a good student, this is a bad student, this is a good curriculum, this is a, if you're not doing aptitude testing, what exactly would be the metric that you would use?
Yeah, really. I mean, yeah, that's a good question because it's hard to, if you don't have a baseline or something, then you don't know, you can't really measure on whether the kid's doing good or not, unless you fast forward 20 years from then and be like, oh, hey, look, he did do good. Yeah. That one thing that I don't do anymore actually worked.
I mean, that's the thing. You go to the end of your high school career. If you've been a product of public education from kindergarten to your senior year, how much do you remember as far as utilization of that knowledge? I can think of being drilled the New Deal was the best thing ever in every single history text, and then you come to find out that, hey, you know what, paying people to do absolutely nothing, it didn't seem to work. In fact, it seemed to retard the recovery of the Great Depression, and it seemed to have a long-lasting impact on society and people as a whole, especially during the time when people were starving and had no money or jobs. So if you teach something bad for long enough and it gets in people's mind, there's no way to correct that. But at the same time, things like trigonometry, or hey, here's a math class. Well, when am I going to use it? Well, you're going to use it for the test. I remember being told that all the time, but there's no application for it. And so if you don't ever do algebra for your job, then you're told, well, you'd never use it. But algebra is one of the biggest things you probably would use on a daily basis if you had to interact with, math in your current life.
Yeah, one thing I have to say to all those teachers, though, too, is they always said...
Is it leave those kids alone?
No, but that's a good song. Is... They never let you use a calculator on your test because they said you're not going to have a calculator on you at all times. Yeah. Well, guess what now, teachers? I've got a supercomputer in my pocket, so suck on that.
There you go.
Should have let me use a calculator.
Yeah. And my calculator, I can just take a picture of the question and it'll solve it for me.
Yep.
Well, here's some of the numbers that I've found. If we're going to quantify it, if we're going to talk about what this cost is to people and what are the results of those costs. So the national average per student per year is $10,500. That's on a national average per student per year. However, in Michigan, where we live, $11,600 is per student per year. But then I found D.C. is one of the highest on average with $20,000. And we know that Washington, D.C. is just a paragon of public education. I mean, they had to build a wall around D.C. to stop people from clamoring to get the great public education in Washington, D.C. The biggest one that I found was Camden, New Jersey, with a grand total of $23,500. And I think if you're going to be spending that much per student per year, you would want to tout that as the here you go, here once there's that South Park episode of how much money does Magic Johnson have to drink in order for him to not have AIDS. Like here's the amount of money where the school system stops sucking, and we just have the most literate people. We have the best utilization of science curriculum. Here's our mathletes. Here's the new inventions that our elementary students are coming up with and putting to use in the workforce. But you don't see that. You don't see that with $23,500 per student in New Jersey, Camden, New Jersey.
And those were public schools, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This isn't factoring in
cost per student.
anything with private education. Yeah.
Because I just Googled private, average cost of private school in the U.S. approximately $10,413 per year. With like the elementary schools right around $9,400 and private high schools around $14,205 per year. So it's kind of interesting that the average cost of private education, which granted it's going to fluctuate on where you're at, is right around the same cost per student per year.
Yeah.
As public education.
Well, and those numbers are deceptive too, because we think about, okay, on little Johnny's back we have pinned to him $23,500 in Camden, New Jersey. So every time that they buy a textbook for him, okay, subtract money. Every time that we pay a teacher, subtract money from him. But no, the number of support staff has increased from 1970 by 100%. And this isn't like teacher helpers. This is mostly in administration. If you go to some of the local schools here and you go by their administration building, they're the palaces. The schools aren't. The new administration building that they constructed is the one. But yet there's no change in the education numbers. Graduation rate for high school is only 84%. In Mississippi, that's 3% of black students graduate.
Wow.
60% graduate into a college. 70% on average, and this is nationally, are literate. So 30% of people go through 13 years of public education and are unable to read to a level that helps them. And, in math you can say, well, when will I use this? But you kind of read every day.
Yeah.
California, 70% of black boys cannot read as of 2017. So this is something that affects people on a disproportionate racial lines. So, of course, this means that all schools, especially in the heart of New York and California, are racist and absolutely hate black people. Or is it a system where you are a cookie cutter of what you have to be, and if you don't fall within that shape of whatever they're trying to mold you into, then you get dumped by the wayside. 16% of African American students proficient in reading and 13% proficient in math as of 2015. I mean, when is it ever okay to continue to pass people who are lacking just the basic skills for a Western civilization lifestyle? I mean, if you can't read, I mean that's what you can't learn. You'd have to teach yourself how to learn in order to learn. And if you can't read, I mean, you're at the biggest disadvantage. But yet we continue to just um, progress people. I mean, you and I were watching the Netflix series Last Chance U, where
Mm-hmm.
you have these football players who are talented and were talented in high school, and they go to college and they fail because they have to meet academic standards. But I mean, they're not functioning students. They're attempting to get by on taking very very basic classes. Not all, of course, but in this junior college area, the academic standards aren't the super. You're not taking brain surgery biology. You're attempting to take art or grammar, and people are still struggling with that, and we're still putting them into a classroom setting that is predominantly based on you know your age. When where else would we do that? We wouldn't do that anywhere else. Okay, well, if you're 34, you have to have this job, instead of, hey, you're 34 and really good at mechanical engineering to put together this engine. Well, you can't have that job with the car manufacturer. You have to be an artist.
Yeah, that's some of the craziest stuff. The idea that this cookie cutter version of teaching works for every single person is what baffles me. That we wouldn't think of multiple ways or just a better way to teach a lot of these kids, because not no two kids are going to learn the same.
Right. Well, and when you have to teach a class of 30 kids the same, there's no if you slow down for one, you're slowing everyone else down. And we you and I both went to public school. When you had the
Yeah.
class clown act out, or that person who wanted to be the center of attention and kind of derail class, you had to wait. You had to hopefully he got kicked out, but he probably didn't. The teacher had to just uh, proceed along, or if they send him out, they're going to send him right back in. There's no trying to bifurcate people into, hey, you're really good in this subject, or let's take algebra. Let's say that you're really good with exponents. Well, you can't test out of exponents to go on to uh, you know uh, parenthetical math. You have to continue to stay with the class, which is always done either at the teacher's pace, which is what the book tells you to do, or you have to kind of find the weakest link and go along with that person. And that person who's struggling to get it probably is just being told the same means of education. So, here's the step to do it. Well, is there other steps? Well, I haven't been trained to do other steps. Here's how the book tells us to do it. Or, there's no other way to think about it. So let's just hurry up and get this. There's no teaching to the student. It's always teaching to the group, to the class. All right, folks, I think that's where we're going to end it for today. Check back later this week where we'll have part 2 of the discussion of the non-aggression principle, how it relates to education. So as always, live radically and live free.
And privatize it.